I run a Boston-based consultancy called TCB Analytics, and we have clients ranging from small startups, universities, Fortune 100s, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit more about what the heck a data scientist even is, and how to hire, how to interview, and how not to interview them. So I won't give you my entire life story, but just to give you some background of where I'm coming from with my experiences. I first started doing undergrad co-ops at Northeastern, and these are 3 of them. These are 6-month-long working opportunities while you're an undergrad, and my first actual data experience, if you want to call it, started in 2005, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then I did a lot of biotech and worked in bioinformatics, so my degree was computer science and biology. There was no such thing as data science, really. I ended up starting out in bioinformatics, and then I did a whole bunch of other startups that were not in healthcare, but also data-focused and data-heavy. Finally did a Fortune 100 Biogen. Big companies weren't really for me. Started my consultancy, and here we are, 2 years later. Oops, gotta get the direction right. And that's Pork Chop. He's my office assistant. He's a French bulldog. So first things first, what is a data scientist? And I want to poll the audience first. How many of you consider yourselves a data scientist? Okay, maybe like a third of the room. How many hire data scientists? And they don't have to be mutually exclusive. A lot of you. How many of you want to become a data scientist? Okay, good. So hopefully all of you take something from this, whether you are a data scientist or a hiring manager. And now how many of you solve problems using data? And a ton of you didn't consider yourself a data scientist right there. That was like almost everybody. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about that. Keep that in mind. So in 2005, like I said, I started this internship, and the PI, he said to me, "You're going to learn something called R." And I thought, well, what the hell is that? It's a letter in the alphabet. I looked it up. It looked like this. It still does, but most people now use RStudio, the fancy GUI. We just had this little terminal. I went to CRAN and naturally downloaded and printed the entire CRAN documentation, probably a waste of paper. Brought it home over Christmas break and started reading. And this was me. I was like, there's no way that I'm going to figure this out in time to be effective at this job. It's a 6-month paid internship. Okay? And within a few months, believe it or not, I was mentored by some really smart PhDs and people there, graduate students, and I was providing value within a few months. Now, was I a data scientist? I don't know, but I was doing stuff with data and answering questions about data. So also, here's the first data scientist job posting in 2008. This is about 3 years later, one of the first. This was put out by LinkedIn, and this was about when I was looking for full-time jobs after my internships. And it was very unique. It said no specific technical skills are required. We will actually teach you and help you learn SQL, help you learn Python and R. Now, even some of this, I don't even necessarily agree with that you have to be smart. Some people don't self-identify as smart. Maybe they could still be a great data scientist. But the last part is we want intellectual sharpness and creativity. So what happened? Blame Drew Conway. Now, this is obviously a joke, but Drew Conway put out this Venn diagram way back when of what a data scientist is. And it went viral, and everyone thought it was, this is it. This is what a data scientist definitely is. And I thought it was reasonable, right? It had 3 circles. It's an actual Venn diagram. But then this happened after. Stuff like this. Apparently, AI, neurocomputing, which I actually thought I wanted to get a PhD in neuroscience. Does anyone here have a PhD in AI or neurocomputing? Okay, well, your PhD has been boiled down to one little circle in the data scientist description. That's ridiculous, right? Okay, and it keeps going. We've got now Drew's Venn diagram embedded within another Venn diagram, if you can see it. I think it's right there. You've got to be an accountant. Maybe you have a CPA. You've got to be a hacker, whatever that means. The salesperson. So, I mean, I don't even know why we need salespeople anymore. Obviously, data scientists are doing it all. Here's another great one. Entrepreneurship, that's great. I bet you didn't know ethics actually falls into the entrepreneurship category. There's, again, some more PhD level type of stuff here. Natural language processing is at the top bubble here. You could spend your entire life, their entire companies built around natural language processing. And it just keeps going and pretty much getting worse and worse. I mean, communication and visualization, there's visual art and design. So maybe in your free time or after your PhD, you got a degree from RISD in art. I mean, this is pretty heavy stuff. It's a lot to know. So I don't blame any of you for not calling yourself a data scientist because I don't know all this stuff. And then they started with these. This is why I said I don't even think it's a Venn diagram anymore. At least Drew Conway's was, but I don't even think I have to go into this one. There's things on here that I don't even know what some of the abbreviations are, but we've got computational statistics and statistical computing. Are those different? I don't know. And it just keeps going. Now, me and some data scientists actually collected these for fun in a shared Google Doc. And it just goes on and on. We have a whole literal collection. It got so bad that we started to make fun of them. So this is my friend Oliver Keyes. He wrote an article about the ridiculousness of the unicorn. And at least he followed the Venn diagram rules. He said, I don't know, but we need 3 circles. Ruby, wow. JavaScript, ew. And we get to this ridiculous data unicorn or data scientist unicorn. We all despise this term, at least I do. And then some more people on Twitter. Sorry. This is my friend Data and me. Here's a Data Cthulhu, we call it. We started, and we're still just not sure what to make of all these legs, but I thought it looked like a sombrero. Jenny Bryan took Hadley's Venn diagram and Drew's, you recognize Drew's, and said it looked like that one I showed you, that they had a chart baby. And then Bear Logo just made up his own. This is Mikhail. There's capitalism and loneliness in the center. I think data science is there somewhere. Beer is on the horn. Okay, so it got ridiculous. And data scientists themselves think they're ridiculous. Job descriptions now, here's an example. Whole bunch of words. Some of them may be buzzwords. Some of them may be the hiring managers don't even understand what they actually are. But we've got, look at that skill set. It's Python, C++, Hadoop, MongoDB if you're doing NoSQL stuff, machine learning. Again, an entire PhD can be done in machine learning itself. Spark, Kibana. And this is an internship, paying $1K to $4K a month. Good luck. The next one on the right, similar, and someone's tweeted this to me actually because I asked for ridiculous job descriptions of data scientists. And we've got this line here, Node.js and everything, that's literally an entire web developer. And they're trying to hire a data scientist that's also an expert in geospatial and also machine learning and algorithms. That's also an internship, believe it or not. And then we've got this that is going on in our field because it's become so popular and so hot. Well, 50 questions to test true data science knowledge. So I read through some of them, of course, and I don't know how to reverse engineer or write a lasso regularization. So I guess that makes me, I'm out of the picture. I'm not a real data scientist. And 5 signs that you are not a data scientist. A nice picture of people pretending to be homeless, saying they'll code for money. You're not a data scientist. So I think we're starting to see why people are so hesitant to call themselves data scientists with all of this nonsense floating around the internet, probably from, again, marketing and hiring managers who haven't actually coded. Or they have, and they're extremely, they're wanting to protect their status in this hot field, maybe for themselves. So just stop. And I do have recommended really good articles at the bottom that I hope you'll read. And then there's unrealistic requirements. So this was actually a survey done by IBM in conjunction with Burning Glass. They mined a database of over 130 million unique job descriptions to come up with what the skills and requirements are. And these are data-focused jobs, but you'll notice the data scientist one requires a master's or higher at almost 5 times the rate, at least 5 or 6 times the rate of the other ones. And the other part of that is it requires a ton of experience. Now the problem is, how many universities do we know actually pumping out data science undergrad degrees and grad degrees? And how many people are able to get a job without having this degree? It's a chicken or egg problem. So sometimes we have to look internally to train and hire people, but also maybe lower our expectations a little more in terms of the degree requirements and experience. And we all know this. The demand for data scientists is projected to soar 28% by 2020. We know demand is greater than supply. Why? Maybe the hiring process is flawed and we're doing it all wrong. So, and I want to talk about this talent gap as well, because I think it's an important point. We've got a lot of people stuck here. Some people say doing unnatural acts with Excel, right? But these people are really curious, they're smart, they know their domain, they know a lot of things, and they're just stuck in this place because they either don't know any better or don't have the opportunities to learn or to use more robust tools. We know Excel is error-prone to fat fingering, copy, paste. It's not reproducible. It doesn't scale. You can't, I've never even tried to open like 1 million rows in Excel. I know it's gotten better, and there's Power BI, yada, yada, but most people, with just a little bit of basic R, maybe Python, some Tableau, dashboard development, that's not rocket science. And I know because I've taught it, I learned it, and there's a ton of need for this type of work that's more along the lines of probably data analyst or BI. Now, there is a need for complex machine learning and statistical modeling, and I worked for a company where that's all we did. They were all PhDs in the company. I was the first non-PhD hired because I proved like, hey, I can apply this stuff. Just because I'm not developing these new algorithms does not mean that, I'm not able to leverage them. But that's a huge leap. That's where you get guys like him in the back and getting a PhD in statistics and machine learning, and that's 7 years from now if we're talking about the future of data scientists, unless they would do a postdoc, and then it could be forever. So I asked data scientists, and I have access, luckily, to about 150 or so of them that we talk in the Slack community. I polled them, and I said, what is the most important attribute you look for when hiring a data scientist? And these are data scientists, but also people that hire data scientists. The top one, and you can see the questions, knowledge of algorithms, problem solving, coding efficiency, strong statistical and math skills. The top answer was problem solving and curiosity. And then communication skills. At the bottom was knowledge of algorithms, coding efficiency, statistical skills, a lot of which can be learned. To what degree depends on what you're looking for to hire. And this is a Venn diagram that I also really like and agree with by Becoming Data Sci on Twitter, Renee. Her 3 diagrams include communication, curiosity, and creative problem solving. Much different from these buzzwords and all the technical skills you're seeing on a lot of job descriptions that, again, can be learned through various means. But the other thing is building a team that meets your needs. So I think there's 3 sort of classes of data scientists, and you're not going to find someone that really does all 3 of these things, most likely. Those are your unicorns, but do you need a business analyst? Do you need someone that can aggregate data, visualize it, and communicate it to the business and solve business problems? Well, maybe you need that. Do you need an engineer? Do you need someone that can scale and make sure that you're able to handle large volumes of data and make the data available and accessible by your analysts? Or do you need to do that hardcore mathematical modeling and have a statistician in-house developing algorithms and doing some serious machine learning? So this is where we're talking about being realistic with those expectations. Maybe you can hire someone who has the passion in-house that you can train. Hire a team instead of holding out for that individual. Clearly define the goals, of course, for your data team. Don't just say, we have a data scientist, here's all this data, do stuff. Because trust me, and I know, I've been guilty of it myself, I will get lost and do everything under the sun, and it won't necessarily provide the value that the business needs. And then understand measures of success for those roles. And I'm going to get into now the interview techniques. So these are the ones we're going to avoid. Whiteboarding. I like to call it the waterboarding of tech interviews. And I've been subject to this. Here's a great story of a guy, you may have heard of him, but he wrote the software Homebrew, which is used by 90% of Google engineers. But because he couldn't invert a binary tree on a whiteboard, they didn't hire him. That just seems ridiculous to me. Maybe people are still doing it because you went through it yourself and you feel like torturing other people. It's a natural human response. But not only that, it's a kind of a dehumanizing, humiliating process, especially if that's not a real life situation. No one ever, you're not in a meeting and someone says, well, just code this algorithm from scratch, no Google, on a whiteboard, right? Talking through a problem, maybe it's a little different, but avoid that. Then there's the on-site all day, I call it the gauntlet. And everyone's been there, 6 hours, or whatever it is, take a day off from work. I read an article on Forbes about this, and I couldn't tell if it was satire. But they said, don't expect to eat at lunch. You might think this is a time to let your guard down and take a breather and relax. Don't. Pack your food, it actually says this, pack your food, a snack, and what you nibble on it when you excuse yourself to go to the bathroom. And then jot down notes when you take a bathroom break. Don't take them during the interview. Looks like you're not paying attention. So I picture this poor guy like writing his notes. But what can we do? So I came up with this test, mainly as a time saver for me. It was selfish for me to just streamline things a little better. I'm a big fan of a take-home test that they do at their own leisure with their resources, their computer. It's called this one-size-fits-all interview kit. It's a fun problem. It's essentially 1.5 million beer reviews from beeradvocate.com. And you don't necessarily have to use this test itself and the data, but it's provided, it's free if you want to use it. Ideally, maybe you have your own data set in-house and a real question that you ask the candidate, but don't expect more than 4 hours of time. I mean, people have jobs and responsibilities. And there's clear and simple questions. So one of them is, which brewery produces the strongest beers by AVB%? Now, there's a right answer to that one. Have one of your teammates or your hiring manager take the test so that you have a benchmark, or someone that you're looking to hire, have like your data guys take the test. If you had to pick 3 beers to recommend using only this data, which would you pick? And I really like this one because it's open-ended, and a lot of data problems are in real life. They're open-ended. We don't always have them clearly defined perfectly. We don't know what we're looking for. But I've had really interesting results come from this. And there's other things like which of the factors are most important in the overall quality of a beer, and if I enjoy a beer due to its aroma and appearance, which beer style should I try? So you're getting into almost like recommendation problems. Like if customer X likes product A and B, will they like product D? And the nice thing is this can be given to PhD level candidates, to entry-level data analysts. And here's one of the questions, and these are 4 different responses from 4 different candidates. Look how different they look. They're all correct, but they proved their point using, someone used a scatter plot here, someone used a scatter plot that wasn't all the points, but it was aggregations of the reviews. We have a histogram, we've got a correlation matrix. And so that's what's really neat about this, is you really get some creativity and you see how people go about solving problems like this. And the other cool thing about the open-ended question was we had one guy who wrote an entire recommendation system, and then another person who did a Bayesian approach to recommending beers. But then we had entry-level analysts just doing, and those are more PhD-level statistical modeling people. But then we had entry-level analysts just looking at summary stats and saying, well, this one has the best taste, best this, I recommend this. And that's not wrong either. That might be what you need out of a business analyst. So elements of a successful response, just to review, are you're gauging the candidate's ability to summarize and explore the data on how they can aggregate and manipulate, but then also the way they visualize and communicate is huge, and I'll get into that. So you're going to want to task them with presenting these results to your team. And here's the components of a successful presentation, a really interesting anecdote. I gave this test to 2 people. There was a guy and a woman, and the guy's response looked fantastic. We thought he was going to kill it, and we got on a phone interview with him, and we couldn't ask him questions. He kind of just gave us like his thesis. He talked at us. The woman, on the other hand, was responsive to some criticism and answered questions, and we found it just a much easier back and forth. And so we've used that to gauge candidates' ability to take criticism and feedback, and also how effectively they communicate, because you're trying to find team culture issues too here. Who fits best with your team? And not only that, but they come to your, maybe on site or maybe they do it remote. You've now spent, at most, I would think, an hour. You avoid the all-day gauntlet. You don't pressure them with this weird code on the whiteboard thing, and you get a really good sense for how they work with your team in presenting work that they've done. So when I'm saying test for the role, here's an example too. You can modify this test. So for the business analyst, again, we're looking for aggregations and summary stats, visualize and communicate, have them present to your business stakeholders or your C-level people or whoever they should be interacting with. The statistician, maybe talk through a more complex approach, like a Bayesian approach, and I reference a really good example at the bottom. Have them communicate their results to technical peers, because typically statisticians will be discussing their work with other statisticians and making sure it's sound. Now, you may want a statistician that can speak to the business too, and if that's true, have him speak to the business. And your engineers, now, if you're working with NoSQL or unstructured data, maybe you have them load it into MongoDB or Postgres RDS in the cloud if you want to see how good he is at working on AWS. And then have them provide instructions to the analyst on how to query the data, because an engineer's job is to really make the data available for analysis, no matter how large or small. And I consider these all some facet of a data scientist. So just to wrap up, and I know I think we've got a lot of time for questions. Start being more inclusive and approachable as a field. Let's cut the whole, you're not a data scientist. Like I said, if you're solving problems with data, you're a data scientist. Do you necessarily fit all the bullets on these job descriptions? Well, I expect those to change over time as people realize they can't fill them. The average time to fill, I think, was over 2 months for a lot of those, at least. Let's be more realistic about those expectations. Like I said, you may not need a PhD in statistics to do some of your business analysis type work. Clearly define better what you need. You need to know what you're looking for going in. Think of those roles, but also don't just hire the data scientist to fill a budget line and say, hey, we have data scientists now in Hadoop, and we have no idea what we're going to task them with in their first 6 months. I'd say at least have a project ready for them that lasts them 3 to 6 months when they get there. So you can give this take-home test. The links are all in the talk, or something similar using your own data. And then have the candidate present to the right team. And you've got maybe an hour or 2 of people's time, and have them go back and forth with questions. And remember, as your benchmark, you should have someone take this test internally, whether it's your statistician, you're looking for results like him, or it's a business analyst. But we should all be grading or scoring these results with that in mind, given your benchmarks and what you need. And I do want to give a thank you to a couple people. So Tom, former boss, convinced me to give this talk. I was kind of interested at first, thinking, do you think it's really interesting? And he said, yeah, I think it could be. So I hope it was. Mara, Averick, Data, and me, she helped me with a lot of the Venn diagram collection, as well as Oliver Keys. Jiggy for feedback, and Becoming Data Sci for letting me use her Venn diagram. So thank you. And we do have like 10 minutes or so for questions. Yeah. To test cognitive skills, like critical thinking? Yeah, I mean, we found asking those questions, like you're basically, during the communication part or the presentation, you can prod them, try to push them a little further and see how they respond, because that's a more realistic, I think, scenario in a business where you say, well, why didn't you try this? and then they can try to speak to it, and you can lead them there maybe. But yeah, I think you certainly can gauge that during that back and forth. Does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't ever tell them to spend more than like 4 hours. Like, take a couple hours on a weekend and give it a stab. And again, I think that's still less than like an on-site all-day thing. But I wouldn't expect more than 4 hours or so. I have given this test to people that claim they don't know R at all. They spent a full day on a weekend and had reasonable results, like taught themselves some dplyr. So you're also gauging how well can people self-teach as well. Because this stuff, it really isn't rocket science unless you want it to be and you're looking for that in a candidate. I think you could do that, but some people, depending on their personality, might not know where, well, they may get caught in like some sort of rabbit hole. It is a good way to test their exploratory data analysis skills. So typically you'd be looking for, well, summarize the variables, let's look at the distributions, how about some data QC? So that might be reasonable. That depends if you're looking for someone to come in and do some more creative EDA around your data. But that's okay too. On this side, yeah. Yeah, I mean, are you saying like, was AI just replacing all of this? Yeah. That can be replaced. I mean, we're seeing some of it, like Kaggle.com kind of commoditizes some of the data science modeling, I think, but it's still not a common skill for people to have to build to do machine learning technically. I don't really foresee it. While the communication piece is always going to be there, I don't really see it really being phased out. I mean, we've got tools now like Tableau where you drag and drop and it does your aggregations. I consider that as close to taking the hard work out as possible, but you still need people that know Tableau. Yes, the hardest part is understanding the question, identifying the right data and using the data to answer that question, and then even then it's probably more the business politics and getting buy-in and all of that fun stuff. The tech isn't really the hard part. Yeah. Yeah, and you know that's another issue is business analyst for some people, to them it may sound too junior or entry level. You can obviously modify titles. I try not to throw too much weight on titles themselves, but if you think the data scientist term or title will attract higher level candidates, but it's clearly defined, maybe it's business data scientist or I personally don't have a problem throwing the term around or the title. I think it is misunderstood, but yeah, it's just I think you gotta you gotta also look in the right places. These conferences, meetups where people are presenting, those are great candidates usually. They're doing extra work, taking time to work on side projects and stuff. Yeah.
Kaggle or something like that in evaluating someone, and who do you feel is doing a good job of hiring data scientists?
Wait, what companies out there are doing a good job? Yeah. I don't know because honestly, I've interviewed with a few of the big companies and didn't really enjoy the interview experience myself. But I think Kaggle is obviously doing a great job crowdsourcing data scientists. We've talked with a few of them and sometimes found the presentation communication skills weren't so great of like some of the top leaderboard. But that's not to say that they couldn't be just more of a not front-facing type of data scientist. In terms of who's doing it well, it's tough to say. I think whoever's putting out really great data science products must be doing it well. So you've got Airbnb has a really impressive write-up on their algorithm for detecting price changes and vacancies, and Zillow they're doing a contest now to improve what they currently have, but you're really just gonna find it from the use cases and I think the success stories that come out. It'll show up in the product. Sorry, I can't hear you speak. You mean like, did you say doing a remote presentation versus in person? Yeah, we've done those. I think that's totally fine. We hired a candidate that way actually, never met, turned out to be a great fit. Do you expect them to be hands-on and doing actual data work too? That kind of candidate, you may want to have them present to multiple groups since they're going to be working across the organization to make sure that they're able to present it to the varying departments and groups. But if depending on what their skill set is, if they're not going to be really doing technical work, you may not want to benchmark other technical interviewees that way. But I think you can use it across the board in terms of they need to understand, especially if they're hiring, what they expect back. And so maybe that person, you just have them present to a wider audience. Hope that answered the question. Yeah. You're saying that the naming convention of what we're looking to hire is the problem? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. There's even subdivisions probably of the three I mentioned, right? Like a data engineer is even very broad. But I think a data scientist is broader. Yeah. 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 Of existing team members that don't have those soft skills that are, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that could be, it depends on how much coaching you want to take on too. So, I mean, I've seen companies bring in speech coaches that teach people how to present more effectively. The problem is if you do a data analysis problem and no one understands it because you can't communicate it clearly, it's essentially useless. So yeah, I mean, either you get those people that kind of have that communication and you want to train them on maybe the tech or the hard skills, or vice versa. You just might have to train some of those soft skills. And it's a lot of work, it's a lot of coaching, but at the same time, you saw there aren't many candidates out there right now. We need to not only work with what we've got, but stay uber focused on what we need. Yeah. Good question. She's asking what kind of projects would make me want to relocate or take a data scientist job. So what gets data scientists excited? I think it's high value and high visibility projects. It's projects where they know that they're adding business value. They can see that needle moving. I mean, the more you can motivate and incentivize people. I was talking to someone about it today, and they motivated people by letting them not only pick the projects when they come, but to show them the actual needle moving, the business value, the revenue. Transparency is really big. So it'll get people motivated. And a lot of data scientists are stuck in jobs where they're doing either very trivial work or they're not happy or fulfilled. And those are the people, you can target them and say, hey, we've got interesting problems. You're working with talented people that you can learn from, and you're going to have visibility up to the C-level if you want it. I think those are some good things. Yeah.
How would you start to look for a good data science team? How would you set it together a new team if you don't really have a team from the beginning? So you don't really know how to set up tests either.
Yeah. Well, like this test?
Yeah, like you have someone who can do the testing before.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes you may just have to throw it out there and see what they come back with. And if it doesn't, I mean, there are answers that I can also share. And if they get them right, then they're probably at least a candidate for an entry-level position. But yeah, it's one of the toughest things right now is getting that mentor that can train up those other people. Like I tell people all the time, go to those local meetups, look for the people presenting, look for side projects on GitHub. But it is really tough. It's hard to find people. So sometimes you got to take a risk, and I know a bad hire is very costly, but you can use your instincts, your gut too, and you get the report. Maybe show it around to some friends. You must have someone that could like look at it and say this is a complete garbage, but you'll get a good idea. You're saying they're embedded essentially within a data engineering team? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Success, right. Okay, yeah. Do they have a manager or mentor that's supposed to be, yeah, okay. No, so how do you measure success? It's a difficult concept but I think, are you guys a products company or consulting? So if you can set up maybe some milestones on new product features or some kind of value add to the product, that's one way for sure. You want to see the data scientists adding new, whether it's incorporating new data sources to enrich the product offering. They should be exploring any way to essentially give you value add so that you can charge more. That's that to me in a products company is one of the most important things. 5:15. You guys can catch your trains. One more? I think it's your, what's that? That they complete it? Or? Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, I have people come to me a lot asking, can I take this and will you offer me advice? And I try to do it when I have time because I think it's important to help other people get into this field. But it should absolutely be part of it. Don't just critique and criticize, and then you should walk them through and lead them to a point where they at least learn something, definitely, or how to get better, or maybe they could have done this more efficiently or used this library. And it's happened, I think I've seen it happen a lot, and it sparks really good conversations, and as long as you're nice about it and constructive about it, then absolutely. I mean, I've gone to whiteboard interviews where they gave me a question that was really more for like a PhD statistician, and I kind of pseudocode knew it, but I didn't exactly, and I asked him, and he said, go home and Google it. That's not what you want to do, and I had no desire to work for that company after that. So it's a really good point. It's a time investment on our side, too. All right. Thank you, guys. Good questions.